My name is Sidney Williams. I'm an art and architecture historian who has worked in Palm Springs since 1973. I moved to Palm Springs with my husband, Eric Williams, and he is the son of E. Stuart Williams, the architect. And after we moved here, I became very involved at the museum in both art, architecture, and preservation. I started working at the museum in the 70s as a trainer of docents, and then I became director of education and public programs. I shifted over to curator of art and architecture and have worked on exhibitions and books and programs. The Santa Fe Federal Savings and Loan Building was owned by a developer named John Westman. And while I was on vacation one summer, I got a call that he had placed a pre-application for development of the building. He intended to build a restaurant and blow out the glass panels on Palm Canyon in the corner and add a 4 or 5 story condominium in the parking lot on the south side. So as I was chair of the Historic Site Preservation Board at the time, I rallied the troops, so to speak, not just on the board, but in the architecture community. That was 2006 when I got that call, and it took until 2009 for the report to make it to City Council, where they need to vote for it. And it was a very close vote. It was 3-2. Various people came forward and suggested that the building be bought by the museum. At that time, the director was Janice Lyle, and she suggested that it was quite a good idea that this building could become an architecture and design center. Eventually, we raised enough money, and we hired Marmol Redziner architects who had recently restored the Kaufman House, and people were very aware of their knowledge and interest in Stuart Williams architecture. So Marmol and Redziner were very active doing research on the building, the original photographs. Julius Schulman shot, I shouldn't say shot, Julius didn't like the word. He photographed all of Stuart's projects. So we had a very good record of that. The aim is to maintain and restore as much of the original fabric as you can, but replace damaged or missing components with matching components. For example, in the interior here, the terrazzo floor had to be replaced because there had been many holes marring the surface when they had put up partition walls. But the stairway that goes to the lower level is the original terrazzo. So they match. You can hardly tell. They're a very seamless combination. To adapt a bank that was built in 1961 to a museum required some other adaptations. Lighting, of course, had to be improved, air conditioning, all the systems pretty much. So they did everything they could to make it as original as possible. The museum purchased the building in 2010. And then it took some time to work on the program, the drawings, the reconstruction, the rehabilitation. And the building opened in 2014 with an exhibition of E. Stuart Williams' architecture career. Stuart Williams was my father-in-law, and he passed away in 2005, the year before this whole scenario started. So unfortunately, he never lived to see it, but we were all aware of his memory and his passion for architecture. I think he would be very much taken by the idea of creating an architecture and design museum out of a bank. It was one of his favorites as well. I mean, the main museum was his ultimate favorite because that was a huge project. And he had a small office, you know, so he was able to do an amazing amount of work. And I think he's sort of smiling with his martini in hand in heaven, you know, because I think he would be pleased. Preservation is a long journey. It takes support, it takes education, it takes a broad community to understand its impact. In Palm Springs, we have several organizations that are interested in preservation. There's the Palm Springs Modern Committee, there's the Palm Springs Historical Society, and there's the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation, as well as the City Commission, which is the Historic Site Preservation Board. With those organizations in place and interest in architecture growing, it was really the establishment, I think, of both the Architecture and Design Council at the museum, providing symposia, lectures, programs, to broaden the understanding of what was in place here in Palm Springs. What did we have? What was our modern legacy in architecture? And for some time, I think the city officials didn't really understand how important preservation was to the city. A building that was destroyed was the Spa Hotel, the Wexler Pavilion and the Cody designed hotel, but also the destruction of the Maslin House by Richard Neutra in Rancho Mirage. That spurred preservation in Rancho Mirage because they didn't have an ordinance there. And there were a lot of people nationally who were horrified that a Maslin House would be destroyed. So yes, there are ongoing examples that we can refer back to and show pictures of the demolition of a house that people admired and then say that should not happen again. Until we started collecting data about the economic impact of tourism, when we had Modernism Week and thousands of people came to attend, to spend money in hotels, restaurants, Airbnbs, whatever it may be, then they started getting the message that preservation had an economic value. It seems that now we have a greater understanding of the value to the community in a larger sense. It's not just one individual's property, but it's within a whole. The Kaufman House, which is probably one of the most iconic modern houses in the world, when it was restored by Brent and Beth Harris in the 90s and received widespread publicity, there was a growing understanding in Palm Springs that we had a very important structure here, and there were many other modern buildings by important architects who made statements in mid-century. It's a historic record preservation, but it's also a community effort. And we have a lot of talent here in the Coachella Valley of people who appreciate architecture, who are architects or designers, artists. Per capita, Palm Springs has the most mid-century structures than anywhere in the country. So we do have a legacy that's worth preserving, and I think that has grown and grown with the educational programs that have been provided.